Okay, I don't know how many people are out there actually looking at this or how many views I might actually get, but I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Leo Archerry, and I am an aspiring writer. Just recently, some of my work was collected in a local anthology of stories and poems from that were collected by Warwick Community College, and it was collected in this book, Echoes and Visions 2011. Now, this is a really interesting book that was printed out this year, and we have a lot of good contributors. But today, or tonight really, I'd like to share with you one of the stories that I put in here. It's called Band of Gold, and it tells a very interesting story that I think people might actually enjoy. So if you'll bear with me, I'd like to share with you this story called The Band of Gold. Okay. The rain hammered down in sheets on this cold, dreary night. Flashes of lightning illuminated the sky as the wind blew an uncomfortable chill in the air. It was a dangerous night, with no guarantees of glad tidings, or even the welcome promise of a morning. They sat in the back of the van, this group of men, all of them hard, trained, ready to rack into the bowels of hell if ordered. They were the best of the best, and they were prepared to do their duty. One man slowly sharpened his blade, honing its edge to razor sharpness in preparation for its possible use, or so he was hoping. Another man was checking his gear, going in his mind a mental checklist of all of his equipment and making certain everything was in place. Two of the men were cracking wise with each other. They had seen and done too many of these missions to stress about anything. One had dark red hair, Coke bottle glasses, and a face full of freckles that twitched every time he laughed. The other was olive-skinned, clean-shaven, and wore a smiley button on his helmet. A touch of irony for a rough job. They were old hands at this, relatively speaking, and they were good to go at a moment's notice. All the men were, with nary a doubt in their mind, except one. The only one who looked at all tentative was the silent man seated in the middle. He held tightly to his weapon, quietly reciting a prayer. His eyes squeezed shut. He whispered a few words that he hoped would bring him comfort. His action was not lost upon the other men, however. They knew that anything could, and often would, go south in these outings. Came with the territory, they would say. They knew the gig was rough when they took it. Still, didn't mean they couldn't give him crap about it. Hey man, no amount of praying's gonna sit your narrow butt if things go down hard, one of the two jokesters piped in. Two things gonna keep you alive tonight. St. Kevlar and the Holy Trinity of Smith, Wesson, and Magnum. A few of the men chuckled at the thought, but it didn't make the nervous man any more comfortable. He wasn't like the others. Sure, he had made it through the necessary training and passed with high marks across the board. He was ready, but he was still new to the job. He hadn't made his bones, as the team liked to call it. To them, he was still a little snot-nosed, a rookie who had to be taught how the real system worked. And show him they did. Their squadron was the meanest, the baddest, and the most noteworthy of all police precincts, and they had all the goals and scars to prove it. They were the elite, the chosen few of the station house, and everyone knew it. Tonight would just be a cake run for these fellas, just a bit of business to take care of before they hit the local cop bar. It was a routine drug bust. They got a tip from a local lay that a large shipment of blow was coming in, and her pimp had lined up a couple of guys for the buy. This bust would be a headline maker, and the mayor wanted his top men on it. In another part of town, a group of ladies were chatting amongst themselves in a small apartment. An informal get-together. The women were commenting on whose kids were doing what in school, what sales were running in the local shops, and whose butt looked cuter on television. Polite conversation, generally housewife shop talk, over glasses of wine. One lady noticed something was off. One of the girls was missing from the fun. She picked up her glass and strolled to the back rooms. She came upon a door on the right and silently knocked. "Sweetie, are you in there?" Her nasally accent couldn't betray her concern. She opened the door slowly, walked through the bedroom setting, and rested on the edge of a windowsill. Outside on the fire escape, a young woman leaned over the guardrail. She was pretty, her face gold and winsome. She was holding a gold chain that was hung around her neck. Hanging from the links was a small gold ring. It was a tiny object, but it meant the world to her. She was definitely not in a party mood. She was elsewhere, and it showed on her lovely face. "Honey," the nasally lady offered, trying to be supportive. "I know you're going through a tough time right now, but you just can't keep dwelling on this. It's not healthy." The young lady turned to her, tears welling in her eyes. I know, it's just..." Her voice slowly trailed off. Her mind was in other moments. The jewelry store, when she gushed after seeing it for the first time. The expression on her face, the anticipation, as he looked up at her from one knee, seeking an answer from her astonished gaze when she held it in her hands again. The way of the chain as he slid it on her neck, promising to be home soon, and to take care of it for him until he got back. These were the prevalent thoughts in her mind, and no amount of obstacle and gossip would make things feel better, safer. Sweetie, the neighborly voice took her in her hand, you need to listen to me. You know what he does. You knew going in. You know what he's got to do. You got to be there for him now. There was a familiar glint of uncertainty in her eyes. She's seen this type of behavior before. Happens all the time in their circle. Their men go out on a job. Next thing you know, they're accepting a flag and bullshit condolences from some suit and a badge spouting off about a grateful city. Meanwhile, they're stuck, being alone. A grieving widow. All bullshit, really. But it happens when you live this life. The young lady wipes her eyes. She has to be strong for the others. Or at least pretend to be. She knew he would be safe. He had to be. He promised. The ring around her neck was a symbol of that promise. She takes a gulp of champagne to calm her nerves, or perhaps to steal them, and prepares to wax nonsense about morning shows, school pageants, and other such penny-ante drivel. Just enough to keep her mind occupied with the here and now. Okay, men, the lead man of the team spoke up. We know our entry points, and as soon as we get the green light, we are go. The men are chomping at the bit, adrenaline flowing in their veins. It was the magic hour. No turning back now. Go in, do their thing, lay some hurt on the bad guys, and be home in time for late-night TV. No stress. The men ran a last-minute munitions and equipment check, scanned the maps for all access ways, and silently shuffled off the van. Go time, bitches! The large man with the honed blade muttered. He was ready to crack some skulls and put some hood down. The young rookie slowly stepped onto the street. His heart was pounding a wild man solo in his chest. He was a bundle of nerves, ready to rabbit at any second. But he had a job to do, and a duty to perform. Hell, he was lucky and made it out in one piece. He might even make his bones tonight. Then the others wouldn't crack wise about him so much. The thought didn't comfort him, but for right now, it would have to be enough. In the warm confines of the apartment, the ladies were starting to get tipsy with all the wine. This meant only one thing. Drunk tongues were about to tell sober truths. There they were, all gathered by the couch, each sharing a little something about their husbands, boyfriends, or as the nasal woman put it, her sperm donor. Some men were lousy in bed, but good with the bill, so it all evened out. One lady mentioned that she once caught her man masturbating to her lingerie catalog. She wasn't mad per se, just disappointed that she hadn't got to read it first. That got a lot of cackles from the audience. Eventually all attention was focused on the young lady who joined them for the back. Female issues, she explained as the reason for her being emotional. They weren't fooled so easily. They knew she was having a rough night, and they wanted to make her feel better. This was the reason, excuse, justification, for tonight's little revelry, if only for the chance to get sloshed away from their families. She was smiling more. The alcohol had loosened her up considerably. She was starting to feel better about herself. My man is a demon in the sex, she shared with the others. Oohs and ahs emanated from the gathering throng. When he gets in the mood, and he almost always is, my knees are still knocking in the morning. That little tidbit received a bunch of hoops and catcalls from the women. One lady even gave her a high five. She knew this was what they wanted to hear from her, if only to make themselves feel better. She knew in her soul, however, that she would not be happy tonight. One of the ladies, drunk as hell and stumbling, slurred, Maybe there's some porno on one of the channels the guys don't think we don't watch. She grabbed the remote and hit the red power button. The blank screen blinked onto a news flash. The local news was reporting on a drug bust that had gone horribly awry. The room was suddenly silent, all attention paid to the LCD. A reporter was detailing the incident. A routine drug bust in one of the bad sectors of the city had gone wrong. A failure to heed intel that the drug dealers were waiting for them in ambush. Major gunplay was exchanged, with numerous wounded and possible fatalities. A total number of victims were not available as of yet, but it was a tragic end to a fitful night. As the reporter on scene tried to talk to one of the local councilmen about the incident, the TV was switched off. There was a stunned silence in the room. A growing fear and sense of panic spread across the ladies' faces. Some held their hands over their mouths, others just stood there in complete shock. They all had the same collective thought in their minds. How will she react? They slowly turned in the direction of the young lady on the couch. She merely sat there, a dazed look in her eyes. She spoke nary a word, not an utterance came from her stiff form. A couple of ladies tried to put their arms around her in comfort, but she shrugged them off. She wasn't in the mood to be comforted. Not by them. Not now. Not after he promised. Eventually, the ladies gathered themselves, regaining their composure after being shocked into sobriety after the events of the night, and shuffled off wordlessly to their own homes and loved ones. If anything was learned tonight, they would appreciate everything and everyone in their lives more, as they could be taken away in a heartbeat. The only two people left in the empty apartment was the nasal lady and the young girl, still sitting quietly in her daze on the couch. The nasal lady had brewed a tea earlier, and set a warm mug in front of the poor girl. Perhaps this would calm her nerves a bit. She hadn't moved from her spot since she came in from the fire escape. Too lost in her thoughts, she figured. The report. That damned report. Why did that bitch have to turn on the TV? Why did that report have to come on? Why couldn't she have a normal life? There was a short knocking at the door. Who was this? It was late. Too late to expect any type of company. The nasal lady slowly moved towards the door, past the small figure that was the young girl on the couch, and peered through the eye-hole. She knew who it was instantly. It was the bald jokester from the squad, but he wasn't feeling so cocky now. In fact, his whole visage was downright morbid. He was holding his helmet in his hands. There was a spot of blood on his smiley button, a dark indication of how this night went down. She cautiously opened the door and looked upon his trembling shape as he stood in the doorway. "Ma'am, I don't mean to disturb you at this hour, but I was wondering if—" His voice cracked, trailing off. She knew who he was looking for, and she called her to the door. The young lady finally found the strength to move from her silent perch on the couch and face the doorway. If she had to hear the bad news, she rationalized, she would face it with dignity, standing up. "Ma'am, you may not know me, but I was on the bus with your man, and I have to tell you, he did us all proud. Tonight was messy, too messy to get into. We lost some good men tonight, maybe too many. My best friend got clipped in the knee, not real sure if he'll be able to walk again, but the docs are hopeful. But that's not why I'm here. I guess what I'm trying to get at is about your guy. He wanted me," he stammered, emotion catching in his throat. "He wanted me to ask you if you still had his ring." Her eyes widened. The ring was supposed to be a symbol of their love for each other, the life they were going to lead. A promise that no matter what happened, they would always be together. The ring hung heavy around her neck, an anchor of sentiment and lost opportunity. He was a man of honor, but not to her. He promised to return home safe. That was why she kept the ring. In doing his duty, he broke his promise to her. An unforgivable sin in her eyes, and a punishment that she now had to suffer. Her sorrow was steadily building into rage, and she was shaking uncontrollably. "Yes, I still have the damned ring," she screamed. She had violently ripped the necklace from her throat, and was prepared to hurl it at him, when she heard a familiar voice coming from the hallway. "Well, if you don't mind, do you think I can have it back? I feel kind of naked without it." From around the corner, poking his head into the cold apartment, was the other jokester squad member. A large smile on his freckled face. He held a look of relief and joy in his eyes. Her anger washed away at the sight of him, and she felt weak in the knees. The other jokester quickly stooped in and grabbed her before she hit the carpet, and held her up as her man came into the room, hale and hearty. He embraced her like it was their first time after many years, and she didn't want to let go. She reached up and stroked his red hair softly, comforting his touch. "Hold on," the nasal woman inquired. "The news said there were a lot of casualties, and you said your best friend got shot in the knee. What gives?" "Well, that's the damnedest thing, really," the clean-shaven member remarked. "We had our rookie member out there with us tonight, and when we got inside, we were pinned down immediately. Old boy here got hit in the chest, but his body armor saved him. I lost balance in the crossfire and couldn't find my way to safety. But this kid did the impossible. He dragged me and him out of the firefight and got shot in the knee for it. Any man who do that for our sorry carcasses is my new best friend." She smiled thankfully. Together they both looked at the happily reunited couple, the band of gold removed from the chain and rightfully placed on his finger, safe as houses. Well, that was a story I wrote for the Echoes and Visions anthology, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it. So I hope you guys liked the reading, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I might try this later on, but sure, why not? So this is Leo Archeri signing off, and thank you.